So the Rochdale by-election is now very much open, and the possibility of it being won by either Simon Danjuk for Reform, which is a bit worrying, or George Galloway for the Workers' Party, which is I like George Galloway, actually. I mean, I don't support his views, but I like him. I find him a very winsome individual, and I enjoy what he has to say. I enjoy his thoughts on things. Paul Ellison, who's a local business owner and campaigner, who's standing for the Conservatives, and Ian Donaldson, who's standing for the Lib Dems. And the Azhar Ali fellow has got into further trouble for criticizing what he calls Jewish voices in newspapers or Jewish voices in the media, which is an outrageously anti-Semitic statement. He then goes on further to criticize Israel's plans. He goes on to boast about ensuring Israeli flags are not flying in Rochdale because he is a town councillor. And the whole thing, some of his comments are perfectly reasonable. I think it's perfectly reasonable to criticize the current government of Israel. I don't think it's reasonable to turn that into a criticism of Jews. And I also don't think it's reasonable to turn that into a criticism of Israel itself. Israel itself is a very healthy signal of diversity in a world that needs to encourage progress and needs to encourage debate and togetherness and help. Israel was founded at a very difficult time, and we in Britain were part of the problem, and we should be part of the solution. Now, I personally don't like Mr. Netanyahu at all, and I don't like his policies. I don't like the ground offensive at all. And just with response to people who've made comments, that ground offensive also includes the aerial bombardment of Gaza. Both I would condemn, not because I think a ground offensive was an inappropriate move, but because of the way that it's taken place. I think a ground offensive was probably inevitable in some form, but a ground offensive of the nature that has happened is the wrong sort of offensive. If it was going to happen, it had to be a multinational action, and I think it would have been possible for Mr. Netanyahu to enlist the support and practical support of neighbouring Arab nations, and that may then have had an effect, because it's not just about the eradication of the Hamas fighters in the area. It's about the eradication of the concept. And what this slaughter has done in Gaza is to increase support for opposition, to increase support for the idea of Hamas in families whose relatives have been killed by the Israeli attack. The huge number of deaths in Gaza does not justify is a testimony of the failure of this action. And then to reinforce that is the fact that so few hostages have so far been released. What was the purpose of the ground offensive? And it's not clear. It changes by the day. Is it to release the hostages, or is it to punish and obliterate Hamas? It's not going to do either. And this is the problem. And depending on who you're talking to, depends on which aim is emphasized. The families of the hostages have been pleading from the beginning for Mr. Netanyahu to pull back from this campaign. There are other voices across Israel, including the voices of previous prime ministers, who are saying very clearly, and have said clearly from the beginning, that the ground campaign was a mistake. It's more than a mistake. It's a slaughter. And stories of, or videos, images of foolish Israeli troops entertaining themselves is again testimony to that crossover from a just response to an unjust action. Because injustice, like evil, is infectious, and good people fall victim to evil. And we should do everything in our power to avoid embracing evil. What I find so interesting in plays like Shakespeare's Macbeth, or the rather more prosaic Dr. Faustus, or Goethe's Faust, or Gounod's Faust, is that the person who embraces evil is shown in these plays, in these pieces of art, to have made that decision. And so often when students write about Macbeth, they take the rather silly idea that Lady Macbeth is evil and Macbeth is just duped. He's not duped. And his great speeches, there's 8 great soliloquies across Macbeth, 7 of which are his. And in those speeches, he goes through almost legally the decisions that he makes to embrace evil. In one speech, he's saying, he would rather have damnation if that meant he could get over killing the king quickly. He would invite damnation. He is deliberately choosing evil. Now, the problem is, it's also possible to fall into evil because of other people's deliberate decision. Evil is infectious. But thankfully, good is also infectious. The more good we do, the more we inspire, the more we infect, the more we contaminate others. I would that we could do more good. And we could, ultimately, I think good wins. But evil is a decision. And evil is also contagious.